we passed that resolution last month, and we then took it and presented it to each law enforcement agency here in the county with a group of members. And those were such wonderful experiences. So there is, I believe, a poster, a plaque back here as you walk out that recognizes those members who helped to put that together. And we want to thank them and give them a round of applause for their efforts. Okay, so seems like I had one more announcement, but I can't remember what it was. So we're just going to move on with our program. Let's see, we're going to start with a prayer by Sharon Simmons, and then we'll have an Americanism by Carol Bracken. And then, are you prepared for a new member report, Patty? No. Michonne, who usually does our new member reports and our member reports, she had something come up this morning, and our hearts are with her right now. So she's not able to be there. So I'll take a second for that, but we're going to excuse her. So we'll start with a prayer by Sharon and then an Americanism by Carol.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, we're thankful to be gathered together today, to enjoy each other's company, to enjoy the nourishment provided, and to become better informed. We're appreciative and thankful for those who came before us, who put their faith in Thee and who built this great country that we enjoy. We're thankful to be joined by Representative Chris Stewart and to have this opportunity to hear what he will share with us. And we're grateful for Representative Stewart for staying true in his work to the intent and words of we the people. Father, we ask for Thy blessing for Carrie and her staff who provide the nourishment we enjoy today. We ask for Thy blessing for Representative Stewart, that he may persevere during the current environment in Congress. We ask for Thy blessing for our leaders at all government levels, that they may perform their duties by staying faithful to the words of the oath of office. We ask for Thy blessing for Michonne, whatever difficulty she is going through. Father, we ask for Thy blessing for those of us here today and for our members not present, that we may be safe through the summer and reunite at summer's end. We humbly beseech these blessings, Father, in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
I have to say, we really did appreciate so much everyone's support on the police recognition, and we know all of you were with us with that as well. And Kristen was wonderful. How many different recognition ceremonies did you go to? Four. That's a lot. So it was a wonderful experience and was deeply appreciated by them. Today I'm going to share with you a few thoughts about Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was the niece of President Teddy Roosevelt and fifth cousin to her husband, President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt never wanted to be a president's wife, but she soon discovered that she relished the opportunity to, in her words, do the most good for the most people. As First Lady, she gave speeches on the radio and wrote a daily column for newspapers and articles for magazines. Between 1933 and 1940, she visited nearly every state in the Union, and that was not easy at that time. During the Great Depression, she was especially concerned about the nation's poor, and during World War II, she flew to Europe and the South Pacific to comfort wounded troops. This was a trying time in American history and in her own personal life. She also dealt with critics, but in spite of it all, she chose to heroically continue raising the hopes and spirits of the American people. Eleanor Roosevelt gave our grandparents, parents, and now all of us timeless advice and encouragement. And this is a really important quote. She said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you stop and look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. And I think that's timely advice for this period of time we're living through. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I remembered the announcement I forgot, and I can't believe I forgot it for a second. Our September event is going to be with Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, and it is fantastic. We are so excited for that. That will happen on September 2nd, so just make sure that you mark that date on your calendars. Okay, now, usually we have our guests introduced and welcomed, but we have a lot of guests today. So what I'd like to do for our membership recognition is let's just start by let's have the Iron County Republican women stand so that we can see who they are. You go. And then if anybody who is a guest today and a future member of our group, I hope one and the same, if you can all stand so that we can recognize you and thank you for being here today. Oh, I met a lot of you. Go ahead and stand. There were more than that, but thank you for being a good sport about it. Okay, perfect. So it is now my privilege to introduce one of our members. Her name is Celeste Malloy, and she works for Congressman Stewart. She will introduce the Congressman to us, but we are very excited to have her take just a few minutes first. So Celeste Malloy, what do you do?
I'm just a legal counsel.
She is legal counsel to the Congressman. So, and she lived here in Washington County and worked at the county, worked at the county attorney's office, and is just one of the best people that I know. She is fantastic. So we're really lucky to hear from her.
It's really good to be in Washington County today. A lot more fun than being in Washington, D.C. as most days. When I talked to Kristen about doing this, she asked me if we could have the Congressman talk about the motto of Washington County Republican Women, and we agreed to that. But as the Congressman and I and our team were discussing what we should have him say, he asked me if I would give my perspective on it, and I'm going to read the first little part of it so you'll know why he wants me to give my perspective. So this is an excerpt from your mission statement, our mission statement. It says, we will empower women with good information and the vision to recognize their potential, elevate women within the community and government, expand the influence and appeal of the conservative movement and principles by leading through example, and embrace all members of the Republican Party. So there's a thing that people love to do in Washington, D.C. that I don't know if it's caught on in St. George yet, where they end all of their emails with their preferred pronouns. So in case any of you haven't noticed, the Congressman is a he, him, and I am a she, her. So he's here to talk about empowering women, and I am one. So I'm going to talk about it for just a minute before he gets up. And I'm going to embarrass a few of my friends. So I lived here in Washington County right after law school, and this is where I kind of started my career in public policy. And a lot of people helped me along the way. Eric Clark hired me right out of law school. I had not even passed the bar yet, and he took a risk on me. And I think that's what, for me, as a woman who has had a couple of different careers now, I think empowering women just means giving us the chance to compete. I don't think we need special treatment or coddling. We just need people to let us do what we're good at. And standing here in front of a room of strong women, I don't feel like I need to say a lot about how women can be successful. I think the proof is sitting here. So what I would like to take my 5 minutes, which may turn into 7, sorry, Congressman, and talk about is, I think as women, the best thing we can do to empower women and elevate women is to give each other a hand as we go. Nobody knows everything they need to know, but collectively, we probably do. So my sister is sitting right here. She's a member of Iron County Republican Women. She was my roommate in law school. Neither one of us knew any lawyers, and we were both suddenly in law school at the same time. And she got me through law school. I didn't know what I was doing. She didn't know what she was doing, but between the two of us, we figured it out. We both now actually work as attorneys, and we've both been admitted to the bar, which is sort of miraculous. And then when I applied for a job in Washington County, the first time I didn't get hired, Eric hired Natalie, who's sitting right here next to my sister, and she had more years of experience practicing law than me. When I got hired, Natalie taught me a lot about what I needed to know to be a lawyer and how to be a deputy county attorney. I wasn't going to just figure that out on my own. I think I'm pretty smart, I think I'm pretty capable, but I didn't already know everything I needed to know. I needed the women who are around me, who are already successful, to help me figure out how to be successful. And I'm sure a lot of you remember Jody Borgeson, who was a member. I think she's not right now because she has little kids at home. But I met her while I was still in law school, and she got me down here and really worked to help me learn how to be a lawyer. I mean, I passed the bar, but I didn't know how to be a lawyer yet. And then while I was working for the county, and I had people giving me the ability to figure out what I was good at and be successful, I met Cindy Bullock, who's sitting right here. And at the time, Cindy was the Iron County assessor. I always say recorder, and that's not true. She was the assessor. And at dinner one night, she told me, there are 2 kinds of successful women. There are the kind who pave the way and then bring a lot of other women along behind them. And then there are the type who, once they're successful, they burn the bridge behind them because it makes them feel special that they got there. And we talked about how much we wanted to be the kind of women who paved the way and brought other women along. And so that's what I have to say about empowering and elevating women. I think the people in this room already have everything it takes, but it's going to take being mindful of the women who are coming along behind us and making sure that we build the bridge, maybe pave the bridge, widen it a little, and encourage people to come across. So with that, I would like to introduce my boss, who is the only person I would have moved to Washington, D.C. for, who also took a chance on me and has given me everything I need to do what I am good at. He's an author, a pilot, a congressman, and a heck of a boss.
I'm gonna rearrange this. I'm pulling these back so you guys can see me. I hardly ever do what I'm gonna do for a while today, and that is stand behind the podium. Usually I grab the microphone and I just stand out there with you and just talk with you. But the topic today, we actually put a lot of thought into, and we took notes. I mean, I speak 1,000 times a week, and I hardly ever say anything new. And I get tired of hearing all my old stories, and so does my staff. And a lot of times we talk about the same things, but this one is a little bit different. And so we really did want to be thoughtful, Krista, because we wanted to respect your request to talk on this subject. And it took us a little time. Talk about empowering women, how we can advocate and help women. I wish I was a woman in the sense if I'm going to talk about this, I should actually rephrase that. It may be more appropriate to have a woman talk on this than a man, but I can give you my perspective. But that's why I wanted you to hear from Celeste. And I'm going to ask some others who will share some thoughts with you as well. Celeste is such a great example to me. I don't want to say I'm the most powerful man in Congress, because I'm not. Nancy Pelosi is, and Ocasio-Cortez. There's a whole bunch of them that are more powerful than I am. But we're getting, into a position where we can really influence some things. My objective in life right now, professionally, is to take the gavel from Adam Schiff from the intelligence community. it's funny how that always gets applause. And you know, we have some influence, but I'm telling you, and I mean this so sincerely, I am no better than my staff. As good as my staff is, it's very, very difficult for me to be better than that because they represent me in so many critical ways. And if you knew how good Celeste was, you would understand, yeah, Chris has got a bright future because of people like Celeste. So when she says she's my general counsel, that isn't just a title, that is her role. And if you would probably be a little surprised and maybe a little scared for those of us who know Celeste, to know how much influence she really has. Yeah, it does. It scares me sometimes. I just show up and say, okay, Celeste, what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to vote and what do I do? And she and others keep me going there. So, and like I say, I'm going to ask someone else to share some thoughts. So a couple kind of housekeeping items if I could before. Kristen, thank you so much for the invitation. And again, I am certain of one thing. I have never spoken to any group more than I've spoken to you. And I'm so sorry for that. I apologize. But here we are once again, and it's such an honor to be with you. And I'll never say no. If you invite me, I'll come anytime you invite me. And there's no one that we would rather speak to. Right now, we have hundreds of people who would like to enter in my office. Maybe not hundreds, that's maybe an exaggeration. If we had a full-time position open, it would be hundreds and hundreds. But we have many, many who want to intern with us. I'd like to introduce you to two of them today, Rayleigh and Madison. Rayleigh's, both of them are right back here. Just stand up for you, Rayleigh. A lot of you know Rayleigh. Madison, maybe not so much because she's up in Iron County, but both of them are very bright young people, very bright futures. Coincidentally, and it is just coincidence, the three interns we have in Washington, D.C. are all women as well. And it wasn't because we said, let's go hire some women. It's because we interviewed the best candidates and we chose the best candidates. And the reason that they're there is because they were clearly the best people, and we were honored to have them come and work with us. Someone else I want to mention is, because you all know him, is Adam, who I think you know Adam and know him well. Shirley, you did, I'm sorry, Shirley.
You always do that, it's okay.
I know, I even practiced. You should be so proud of Adam and the work that he has done. He's a remarkable part of our success. And by the way, can you hear me okay in the back? Is that all right? This isn't very close. And I got to be really careful saying this, and I said it to someone earlier, but it's true. I live in Davis County, but I spend very little time in Davis County because Davis County doesn't need me. Washington County does. Iron County does. Sevier County does. Because you all have this incredible overreach of the federal government that they impact your lives on a day-to-day basis. And so we go where we're needed, and that's to central and southern Utah. And Adam is the one who directs things for us down here, and he does an incredible job at that. So thank you, Adam, for doing that. Got to put a plug in for Lisa, and who is a former chairman here, and thank you for your new responsibilities. And for heaven's sakes, go listen to Dennis, right?
Please.
Yeah, because Dennis Prager would be. Look, it's too bad that Candace didn't come, and kind of shame on her for not doing that. She missed an opportunity, but Dennis is every bit as influential and will be as entertaining and informative as well. So please go listen and enjoy that. And last thing, as a personal note, if you could, I got to do two very important things this morning. One of them was I got to, as I shared with some of you, I got to go present a medal for a Vietnam veteran who did something incredibly heroic. As I said, it's the kind of thing you write books about and you make movies about, but he'd never gotten the recognition that he deserved. And we got to go have a formal military ceremony with him and present that to him and his family and for his children and grandchildren. That was a lot of fun. But the more important thing that I got to do this morning was go spend a little time with my dear friend Dean Cox and he and Lorraine. And this may be the first time I've been here that they haven't been sitting among us. So I think I would just recognize and ask you to keep, I know that you are, keep Dean and their family in your prayers, because he's had a rough battle, as you all know more than I do, and he's someone that we respect and admire. And sometimes God is the only one who has the answer, but God can help along the way too. And we pray that God will help him and his family as they go through this bit of an ordeal. Okay, so you want to talk about how to empower women and how to help women. I wish, for heaven's sakes, I wish my wife was here. She suffers no fools, which means that I am scared to death all the time. Because she has this mixed blessing of having lived with me. And I know it sounds patronizing, and the great fear I have in taking on this subject is I don't want to sound patronizing. But she's clearly the smartest among us. And if you don't believe that, go talk to any one of my kids. I have really smart kids, and they all got my wife's intellect. And I got to say, too, when I first met her, she is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. But the thing that really attracted me to her was just a person that she was. And yet, you know, she stays home with our kids while I get to stand out here and speak to you. I get to go on television. I get to go back to Washington, D.C. But all the time in my mind, I know what she is and who she is and what she represents and the person that she is. And I can't tell you the number of times I thought, I wish that she was here. And one of the great sacrifices of this job is I don't get to spend time with the person that I care most about in the world. But what a wonderful person she is, and I wish that you all could get to know her. And if she could come and talk on the subject, she would say things that would really matter. Because she is emblematic of this idea of it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you can be a powerful person regardless. And it also doesn't matter your position in life. You don't have to be a member of Congress. You don't have to be a commissioner. You don't have to be chairman of the party to be some of the most powerful people in life. And I think many of us recognize that. I used to do these events before I came to Congress. As some of you know, I was a writer, and I did these what they call Time Out for Women events. It was sponsored by Deseret Book, and we'd go to these conferences and speak primarily to women. They were oriented towards women. And there'd be a couple thousand people there sometimes. And whenever I did that, I always had this kind of how I feel today about, you know, I want to say things, but I don't want it to come across as if I'm patronizing, because it's easy to do that. And I just was remembering that to be sensitive to that. When you're, as to use Celeste's words, when you're in a room of strong women, and if you were going to talk about this, I don't know that I have much to say, but let me offer a few things. And then I'm going to close on a little more political context if we could, but not a lot. And then we'll try to take some of your questions. One of the things that I can do is kind of technical. It's not very interesting. It's not very personal. But one of the things I can do that actually is important is to advocate and pass laws, and in some cases to fight against laws that, in the case of fighting against the laws that diminish the role and the ability of women, and in the case of advocating in order to protect and to promote the role of women. So, for example, we voted to protect pregnant workers, and I could go into details on this, but you get kind of the general gist from the titles, perhaps. That was about a year ago. The Save from the Start Act, again, primarily towards women and families. That was more recently, just a couple of months ago. And then, unfortunately, in this Congress, and with one of the most powerful women in the country leading this Congress, we have the opportunity to vote all the time against legislation that is designed to destroy families, designed to destroy the role of women, whether it might be professionally or in some cases in their own families, in their own communities, and designed to not empower women, but to take the power away from women and shift it to the federal government and make women dependent on the federal government. And as frustrating as it can be in Congress right now to be in the minority, that is an important role. And you know what? We're not able to stop some of that legislation, at least not from coming through the House. But the battle goes on in the Senate and with the president. And if some of that legislation will pass, and it will, then to fight to repeal it or to fight to diminish it. I've already indicated one of the funnest things I get to do is hire people. And what a pleasure it is to bring in women and make them important roles in our office. One of the things I'd ask Celeste to comment on this. Do we have a fairly collaborative office, do you think? Go ahead and take a bite of food first, and then I'll
Very much so. I'm I'm gonna tell them what you tell us. We have a motto in our office: you get your say, you get your orders, and you get to work. But the first part of that is really important. We all get a say in the policy in our office.
We really do. When I sit in a room with my staff, I recognize I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I want to hear what they have to say. And we try to have an environment where people can agree and then disagree. And we do have disagreements. Now, when they disagree with me, I know they're stupid, so I have to kind of disagree. Of course, that's not true. And have you ever changed my mind on things? Yeah, it happens not all the time, but it happens frequently. And I love that saying. That's actually an old military saying. You get your say, and that's all, as employees, that's all you really want. Just give us a chance to have our say. But then there's a decision. You get your orders, and then you get on with it. You know, you move on. You try to implement the policies that you've decided on and try to make it a success. And I think that's probably pretty good counsel, and we've tried to implement that in my office. And then finally, a final comment on this, and that is, as a member of Congress, I get to do some fun things like nominate women to the academies. And that is so much fun. We had dinner, we have a dinner for the cadets we're sending to the academies every year with the cadets and their families. Ours was this last week. It was Tuesday, I think. And Ava Huber, who's John Huber's, the state attorney here, it was his daughter, and she's got a very bright future. You know what she wants to do? She wants to fly jets. I'm going, that is so cool. And encourage her to do that. Something that, you know, in my lifetime as a military pilot, we had very few women when I was first in the military. And we quickly learned that there can be some extraordinary pilots. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. They're very capable. And it's fun to be able to do that. And a good friend of mine, General Dalto from the Utah National Guard, first woman who's been selected and promoted to the office of general in the Utah National Guard. And we're very proud of her and what she's going to do. Okay, I'm going to hit a couple other comments if I could, and then very quickly. I'm going to tell an old riddle, and I know that all of you will, I think most of you will have heard it and you'll know the answer, but it's still useful as a kind of an illustration. I remember hearing this when I was young, and I couldn't figure it out, by the way. I don't know, 12 or 13, I was young. My dad told me this riddle. So a father and his young son were driving to scout camp, and they got in a car accident. And they rushed the little boy to the hospital, and they rushed him in the emergency room, and he needed surgery. And after a few moments, the doctor came out and said, "I can't operate on this little boy. This is my son." Now, how could that be? Right? Have any of you heard this? Okay, what's the answer? It's his mother, right? Well, it seems obvious to us now, and I think if you were to say that, so I'm going to use, Rayleigh, I'm going to use the example. Have you ever heard that riddle before? Okay. Madison, have you heard it before? Dang it. Is there anyone young who hasn't heard it before? Did you know the answer? You did not? Okay, thank you for your honesty. Was there anyone else young who'd heard it before, who hadn't heard it before? Okay,
I'm old and haven't heard before.
You're young. Did you figure it out? Okay. Yeah. And so when I was young, the generation, I mean, it puzzled all of us, right? Because what's the assumption? Well, it's a doctor. Got to be a man, right? Which is the whole point. And I think it's much, much less likely now. And Rayleigh and Madison are pretty good examples of it. You figured out, did you figure it out the first time you heard it? No? Dang it. Well, there goes my whole teaching moment. Okay, I'm going to generalize and say I really think that younger people really are more open to saying, yeah, the doctor was a woman. Clearly more so than when I was 13. And that's a good thing. Because I think society's done a better job of recognizing and opening opportunities for women. And that's one of the funnest roles that I have, and it really is fun, is to hire people, really, really bright people, to give them an environment where they can have input, feel like they're having some say, give them and empower them, and then to help them move on to the next challenge. Help them and promote them to where they can go on and do some other really cool things. And I think that as a boss and as I hope a mentor, and someone who's in that position, that's one of the funnest things, and I think it's one of the greater responsibilities that I have. I think that's a way that we can do to use words from your mission statement, which I think is wonderful. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just one section. Empower women to recognize their potential. And by the way, I think that's universal. It's not just men, and it's not just women. All of us need that little bit of help sometimes to understand our potential. And I want to give you one example, if I could, showing that I think that we may not realize the impact we may have. Got to tell this really quickly. When I was in college, I took a creative writing class. I was actually telling someone about this recently, which is why it came to mind. This was at BYU, and I was, at the time, I thought I was going to go to law school. I was trying to keep good grades, and be smart. I didn't want to take this creative writing class, but I had to, and I did the best I could. Almost our whole grade was based on a short story we had to write. So that's where almost of our grade came from. Handed it in, got my report card, got an incomplete. I thought, well, that kind of sucks, right? What happened there? And I called the professor and went in and talked to him, and I said, why did I get an incomplete? He says, well, here's the deal. He says, you got the short story, it's pretty good, and you're not a very good writer, and I don't think you wrote it. And so I was able to show him previous drafts and say, look, I wrote it, and this really is my work. And I said, I'm trying to get into law school. Thank heaven I didn't go to law school, by the way. No offense, counselor. and convinced him I did it, and he gave me a B or something. I really don't remember. Okay, that was my feedback with creative writing, and it wasn't positive. So I didn't say, well, my next goal is to go write the great American novel, right? And so probably 15 years later, I was rocking my little girl to sleep at night, who had a brand new baby, and I had this idea. I said, man, that would make a great book. Someone should write that. And then as time went by, I sat down and started typing, and I realized I'm writing a book. And I kept thinking about this professor, saying to, hey, you're not a very good writer. I don't think you wrote this short story. I go, I can't write a book. This is terrible. It's never going to work. I really did think that. But you know what changed that? Because a little bit before that, I was writing this report for my job as a military officer, and it was really important that I get this right. I sent it to my older brother, who's a federal judge up in Salt Lake now, someone I really trusted and admired, and I said, will you review this for me and help me? He did, and he gave me a few suggestions, and he wrote at the bottom, hey, you're a great writer. And all of that time that I was thinking, I'm not a good writer, I can't write a book, how dumb is this? And if I need evidence of that, let's go back and talk to my professor. But I kept coming back, yeah, but my brother Ted said I'm a good writer. And that is a simple example where it's really true. He changed my life. That one thing he wrote on the bottom of that letter literally changed my life. And if you want to talk about how to empower people, give them honest, positive feedback. Because you may not have any idea of the impact you'll have on it by doing that. And it certainly changed for me. One other thought, and I'll end. You talk about expanding influence and appeal to the conservative movement to embrace the Republican Party. The media would love to portray the Republican Party as in tatters, as if we're at civil war, as if we're all going to destroy each other, and it's not true. They love that narrative, and it's simply not true. But you all have the mission statement to empower and support one another and to embrace members of the Republican Party. Please understand how important that is, especially when we're talking about a day where division and trying to divide us as Americans and trying to divide us as Republicans is so predominant. And let's continue with that part of your mission statement as well. Last thing I want to mention, and I think this may be the most important thing, we were talking about this before we came here, and I was again with our staff and talking about it. Where's Rhonda? Rhonda said something to me that I thought that's the most important thing we could say. And I asked her, would you just say that, share that same thought with us? And you could say it better than I could. So Rhonda, will you just share with the group what you told me?
I probably have a loud enough voice. I can just talk here. The thing that I asked Chris to mention is that the reason we need conservative women in policymaking, in politics, in government, is because.
Would you mind going?
Okay. I thought I had a loud enough voice. apparently not quite for the back corner. Women have a perspective on family that needs to be brought to the table. I think that, all of us care about our families, but a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, a daughter, you bring a perspective of protecting children to the table that needs to be heard. And I have 5 children of my own. My oldest is 26, my youngest is 11, and I have seen increasingly in the time I've raised a family, a true assault on the innocence of our children. And, whether it comes from media, but I see it coming sometimes from what they're learning at school. And so I've had to have conversations with my children at a much younger age than I had to with my older kids. So I think that assault on our kids, no matter where it comes from, that perspective has to be brought to policy making. And women have a unique perspective on that needs to be taught. And so that's why we need women in politics. And I think that I'm always conflicted because I love working and I love, doing all kinds of events for the congressman and things. And I'm, you know how it is, right? You want to be home, you want to be at work, you want to be at home, you want to be at work. But I have been able to be surrounded in my life by men who have encouraged me to do what I'm good at. And I have a husband that has said, you know what, you're a great mom. You can do this too. And you can do it both, and it's okay. And I think that my children have benefited from that. But no matter what we do as women, I think that perspective on children needs to be brought to the table.
So thank you, Rhonda. And as I said, I needed you to hear that from her, not from me, and trying to replicate her words. By the way, I've tried to push Rhonda to run for city council, for commission. If you ever run, I will be your campaign manager. And I'll absolutely vote for you and get everyone I know to vote for you. Adam, by the way, if you ever run for something, I'll be your campaign manager. I just won't be quite as enthusiastic as I am with Rhonda. Okay, 2 other thoughts if we could. I have a whole list here, literally a list of 2 pages of things that I could mention to you what we're trying to do for Southern Utah and try to help Southern Utah. I won't go through the list. We'll close with a couple of things, but there's no place more important to us. Commissioner, I hope you know that's true, and that we try to do everything we can for you here. By the way, I'm going to mention one thing, and I'm just going to mention it. Critical race theory, 1619 project is something I've been beating that drum for a long, long time now. If you don't know what it is, find out what it is and go fight to keep that out of Utah schools. It's one of the most important things we can do for our kids. If you care about kids, if you don't think it's a good idea to teach our kids to hate their country and to hate each other, then go fight 1619 project. Yeah. Okay, so 2 stories if I could, because that's what, at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller. And every one of my stories I've been told 1,000 times, and some of you have heard it before, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's worth and it has a point to it. Back when I was flying helicopters, have I told the helicopter story here? Are we okay? All right. Back when I was flying, I flew helicopters for a while before I flew jets, and helicopters was a lot of fun. I actually volunteered to go do it because it's special forces, special ops, combat rescue, really cool flying. But jets go really fast and, do cool stuff, and helicopters kind of go plodding along like this. I used to say, anywhere you go, I could go there in a helicopter or I could drive with my family. It's about the same speed. The only thing is with my family, we stop and go to the bathroom a lot more, so we probably get there first in a helicopter. So this was up in Fairchild Air Force Base up in Spokane, Washington, and on the other side of the Cascades, and they would get what they called these Chinook winds. Gary, who works with me, is from that area, and really powerful winds coming off the Cascades there. I mean, 100 knots, 100 mile an hour winds pretty frequently. And I was with this young pilot, a student pilot still, actually he graduated from pilot training, but he's really young and trying to get him checked out. And we're flying from Spokane to Seattle, but we're not doing where helicopters normally do, down at a couple hundred feet. We were actually doing an IFR mission, which is instrument flight rules. We're up at a couple, like 5,000 or 6,000 feet with the other airplanes, because we're pretending that we can't see, we're flying by instruments. So we're flying at 5,000 feet, we're heading west, and we're in the face of these winds. And as soon as we took off, I could see, yeah, we're not gonna make it. winds are too strong, we're just probably not gonna get there, in time, and we're gonna run out of gas. So after a while, I expected this young guy to kind of figure it out, and you know, he didn't. He's so focused on flying. He's just so focused on flying. So I tried to help him out. Hey, how's our fuel look? And he kind of thinks, well, oh yeah, we're good. Like, no, we're not. We're gonna flame out way before we get there. So okay, that's fine. You know, we go on a little longer, and we're kind of getting to the point where we got to decide one way or the other. And so I asked him, so how's our time look? Yeah, we're going to be a little behind on time. Yeah, I was like, never. And how's the fuel look? Oh, we're good on fuel. Right, okay. So then I called Air Traffic Control Center, because they can give you a ground speed check, which is telling you how fast across the ground you're going, right? I said, hey, Center, give us a ground speed check for Rescue 55. There's a little pause. He goes, I got you going 20 knots backwards. That was true. We had such strong winds that we were actually going backwards. So, last November we had 150 knot wind in our face, and we can only go 120 knots. And some of us feel like we're going backwards. And by the way, we're not going backwards at 20 knots. We're going backwards at like 2,000 knots right now. The things we're doing, the things that Ms. Pelosi and Mr. Schumer and this president are proposing and pushing in Washington, D.C. should scare the life out of every one of us. And if they don't scare the life out of you, it's either because you're a Democrat or because you just don't know. Because anyone else just should be frightened, and they are frightened. The American people are frightened by it, which is, by the way, why so many people are going to be moving to St. George and other places, because they feel like the world's lost its mind. I want to go somewhere where there's some sanity. And I think that's going to be true for the next generation. So yeah, we've got a headwind, and that's true, but we got to live with that. And I did an event last night where we had all these, everything, the list of things that people were upset about was really long. And at the end of it, I said, hey, but look, remember this. We know how to fix this. Look at the last 4 years. We fixed almost every one of these problems. And if we'd had another 4 years, we would have fixed them all. So if you think, well, we can't fix this, that's not true. And it's not like we don't know what the answers are. We know what the answers are. All we got to do is convince the American people to let us go fix it. Let us go back and implement the same policies that are being destroyed right now. And it'll fix many of these problems. So we've got a headwind. Stay with us. Stay with us for another 18 months, and we'll take back the House. I will get the gavel from Adam Schiff, and that will be fun. And we will swear in Kevin McCarthy as the next speaker. And he is an extraordinary leader and an extraordinary man. He will lead us. We'll get the Senate back. And then let's move into 24 with a fight, because this fight isn't over. Which kind of brings me to the last point. I'm going to tell this really quickly, because I'm way cheating on the Q&A. But this is a story worth remembering as well. Some of you are familiar with it, so I'll tell it briefly. Jamestown, 1608 and 1609. The first English settlement in the country. And it's important to remember, we think of it, well, as the only settlement in the country. It's not. It was the only English settlement. The nation of Spain had colonized much of the world at this point. They'd colonized Saratoga and parts of Florida. They had come up that point. They'd come up through this part of the United States, clear up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area. They had all of Central and South America. And they had extracted the equivalent of trillions of dollars of gold. They were far and away the richest nation in the world, not even close. They got as far as the Philippines. The Spanish Empire was a meaningful empire at the time, and the only thing standing against it was this little town of Jamestown. Going into that winter, there was about 600 people there, including families. That winter, they called it the starving time. Have you heard that phrase before in history? The starving time. Throughout that winter, because of a series of events, unfortunate events, as they say, 90% of them starved to death. There's about 60 to 62 that survived the winter. There's this little story, and I've written a little bit about this, of a little girl who snuck out from underneath the wall of the fence to go down to the James River to dig worms, because that's what she was eating. It's the thing that sustained her for most winter until the ground froze. And the few survivors that were there weren't people who were sitting around fat and happy. They themselves were on the brink of starvation. They were to the point of delirium. The people who had ended up coming with their sister ship from the Bahamas that got shipwrecked repaired it and came up to Jamestown. And they thought they kind of entered this really weird kind of insane asylum kind of thing. So the people that were so starving, so mentally deficient, many of them acted as if they had lost their minds because they had. And it was frightening for them. And they had a little time to repair, and they had a little time to get, these others had a little bit of supplies, but not much. So they were still hungry and still desperate. And then they got on the ship and they were heading back to England. And it was like, this is too hard. Can't be done. It's too hard. And they sailed on the James River and they get out into Chesapeake Bay. And I was assigned to Langley Air Force Base, which is in this area. And I'm telling you that 300 days out of the year, the visibility there is about a mile, maybe a half mile, all the time. And it's in the summer because the humidity and it's just rare that you see more than a mile. And yet this one ship in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, which is hundreds of miles wide at this point, happened upon the only other ship in the entire Western Hemisphere at that point. And they sailed within sight of each other. And they realized this is a supply ship from England. And so they went to the mouth of the James River there, and they went to the shore, and they had a bit of a powwow. And they said, well, what should we do? And they made the decision to what? Stay. To go back. Even though they're still starving, they said, we'll go back. We'll try again. And they knew it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't like life is a big party now, we got supplies. And they did have years and years of struggle ahead of them. And by the way, the 90% figure at Jamestown was true for about 2 generations. Those who survived, the initial ones who came over, it was about 80 or 90% of them never survived. And yet they went back. So we got headwinds in our face, we'll live with that. Don't ever give up on our country. Don't ever say, nope, I'm going home to England. Because here's the deal, there's nowhere for us to go. It's either here or it's nowhere. It's either here for our kids or our kids just don't get it. The freedoms and the things and the privileges we have, it's us or it's nowhere and it's no one. So don't give up and don't quit fighting. Give us a chance to win in 22, give us a chance to win in 24, give us a chance to save our country. And some of you are nodding your head, and I'm so glad to see you do that, because I know that you agree with that. You guys, people like you are the people who will save our country. It's not me. I'll play my role, I'll do what I can do, but it's way, way more than any one of us. You will have an enormous influence on saving our country. So God bless you for being here. God bless you for caring about it. And as always, God bless. As always, God bless the United States of America. Thank you. I don't know,
Quick questions?
like 1 or 2 questions.
Do
Okay.
you want to run it yourself?
I'll
You
do
got
you want
one
to do it?
mic? No, I want you to do it.
Okay, if there are a few questions I talked too long, it's Celeste's fault. She went way over time. I told her, Celeste, take 30 seconds. She went on and on and on. I told her, Celeste, take 15 minutes, so you guys know. Yes, in the back.
Congressman, first of all, thank you for your comments today. Very positive for all of us. And I don't mean to be negative, but I have a point that I would like to make, if you don't mind. And I'm concerned, I think a lot of people here are concerned about the problems in Congress, particularly the corruption that appears to be going on. Primarily in the other party. And just one example, in this last congressional race in Salt Lake, Congressman Burgess and I forgot the other.
McAdams.
Yeah. If my numbers are correct, on the Democrat side, there was about $3 million contributed to his campaign. Now, I'm not sure on that amount, may have been more. But that's the problem that we have, is how much you're willing to pay for one vote. And that's scary. I just want to make that point, see if you had any comments.
Well, And I'll just comment on that briefly. I mean, the number for that race spent between both of them and outside groups was probably close to 20 million, if you can imagine.
Wow.
They approached 9 to 10 million, both of them, including outside money. I won my first race here. I won. By the way, you can not spend much money and lose. That's kind of easy. But to not spend much money and win is hard. My first race, I spent $130,000. Kind of put that in perspective. So there's no question. And look, if you're in a race, you've got to raise $10 million. That's a huge challenge for everyone. People sometimes have this perspective that the people's votes are for sale. I really don't believe that's true. Maybe in extraordinary circumstances, but the truth is you don't have enough votes to sell. You know, you just can't raise enough money, and if you think you're going to do it by voting a certain way, good luck. So I don't think there's the perspective that people sell their votes to raise money. I've truly never seen it, and it's just impractical in many ways because of the amount of money that so many races have to raise. Do I wish it was less money? Absolutely. Do I wish that we could have, you know, more one-on-one retail politics? And I am in a blessed position where I can do that in many ways. But some races just aren't. So I know that's a partial answer. It doesn't really satisfy you, I'm sure, but that's the point you raise deserves, you know, 20 minutes. We probably don't have it. Let me go over here real quick. Let's go with someone young. Yeah.
So something I ran into, and I've been talking to my friends about critical race theory, and the 1619 project is the last minute, what's so negative about it? Why don't you like it? And so for me, being a political junkie, I can say, well, let me give you the 5 pages of research I've done, but no one has time to read all of that. So for you, what would be like 2 or 3 points that you, just in conversation, you can just point at and be like, this is why critical race theory is detrimental to our society and to our culture, and this is why you should.
Okay, it's a great question. The elevator speech for critical race theory. I've written about this, I've editorialized about it, been on TV about it, and still a lot of people, I mean, I texted my family last week and said, I'm the most hated man in Utah right now because of our editorial against critical race theory. Here's the deal. The 1619 project, if you don't know what it is, and many of you do, the reason I objected is because it's a lie. Teach history, but teach the truth. And the methodology on this has been refuted again and again, including by other Pulitzer Prize winning writers who have said that you should rescind the Pulitzer Prize for this. It's just not true. And I'll give you one example of it. One of the premises is that our founding fathers were motivated to fight the war to separate from England because they wanted to preserve slavery. And there's not a word of evidence to support that. Nothing that any of them said, nothing that they ever wrote, and nothing that they ever wrote to each other. So look, teach history, and we should teach history. And by the way, slavery should be taught to our children. It was a horrible stain on our nation, one that we've been trying to recover from for more than 100 years. But we fought the Civil War to end it. We fought the Civil Rights Movement to get better. I don't think there's a person in this room who would look at a minority and say that person isn't equal to me in the eyes of God. But teach the truth. And if you have to lie to persuade people, then why is that? So that's the first thing I would say. If you want an elevator pitch, it's not true. And just the very premise, well, the founding of our nation didn't take place in 1776. It took place in 1619 when we brought the first slaves to Jamestown. I mean, what about our founding fathers and what they've done? And the second thing I'll say on this, and then I could keep going, but I won't. And I'll say, here's the reality. The economic model and the model of a constitutional republic that the United States created changed the world in incredibly positive ways. There has been no greater influence on the world in the history of the world. Because of our example, for example, one of hundreds I could say, about 370 million people in India have been lifted out of poverty since you were born. In the last 30 years, maybe you're younger than that, but in the last 30 years, 370 million in England, because they turned away from their Soviet Union planned government and turned to what we offered them. And so the premise that the United States is evil and needs to be torn down and started over is just a historical nonsense. And then it's critical race theory, I'll just say this one thing about it. Is it a good idea to teach children to hate each other? Because that's what it does. So again, like everything, I could keep going, because I am a politician and I like to hear myself talk. But, that's a short answer. I want to be sensitive of your time. That's probably good. Hey, thank you all. It's great to be with you. Appreciate it.
Well, let's thank the Congressman one more time. We are so grateful for the time he spent with us tonight. And especially for taking on the challenging task of covering the topic that we asked him to address. So thank you. And thank you once again to everybody who attended today. We are so glad to have you here with us. So thank you.